Hello, everybody. I am doing my project based on Alfred Adler. And his main gist or his simple biography was that he was born in 1870 into a Jewish family in Vienna. One main important aspect about him is that he has intense jealousy of his older brother, which would eventually impact his work or his theories in his future career. He suffered from rickets at a young age that then affected him for the remaining of his life, which also impacted his jealousy of his brother because he was more fit, more healthy than he was as a child. He was his father's favorite, while his mother stopped pampering him in favor for his younger sibling, which explains his disagreement with Freud's theory of the Oedipus complex, where he would have a better relationship with his mother instead, but in this case, it's not. In medical school, he specialized in neurology and psychiatry because he was distressed at his helpfulness to prevent death. In 1910, Adler was the president of the Vienna Psychoanalytical Society and co-editor of its journal. He was a large critic of Freud, and both were hostile towards each other. In America, Adler was very popular and even founded the Society for Individual Psychology. So throughout his um, education, he was not as skilled or um, inept as other people, but with hard work, he was able to become top of his class and um, eventually get all these credits from being like a popular and psychologist and founding like many societies down the road. So this also supports his theories on how compensation and working hard towards superiority is important within personality. Okay, some of this is more of a look onto Alfred Adler's theories. One was the inferiority feelings of complex, and the other is the superiority feelings or complex. So, inferiority feelings is an unconscious sense of inferiority. Adler believed that this was the main motivating force in human beings, meaning that we are all born with inferiority as we come out of our mother's womb as a young child, as a baby, basically. The term complex would eventually be used to generalize the feelings of inferiority and was popularized with inferiority. This context connects well with Adler's theory of individual psychology, where growth stems from compensation and would assist in overcoming the inferiorities. Other ways that brings about this complexities are spoiling and neglecting within the family compound, basically. Superiority feelings or complexes. Superiority feelings is where a person overcompensates for normal feelings without actually having the need to show off these certain skills. This can be exaggerating one's ability and accomplishments without feeling the need to demonstrate with any accomplishments, like I said. Adler would specify on that as humans want to be perfect um, to then be whole and complete. So perfection is connected to being whole and complete in the long run of a human's life. This connects to the term's finalism, where humans would have their ultimate goal. The term fictional finalism derives from the term in which fictional ideals or goals would benefit towards a person's goal. So there's realistic ones versus unrealistic ones. Okay, and there is social interest and birth order. Social interest is the potential to cooperate with other people to achieve personal and societal goals. Individual have to work with others in order to realize personal and communal goals. Adler also adds that the presence of a mother is important for the child for their own social interests, Adler connects his own life with his ideas of social interests when he was able to get recognition for his own work. So working with other people basically affects the personalities and would eventually help create realization for their own goals and also goals with other groups of people. Birth order is also one of Adler's theories, which I feel is one of his main differences from other theorists. It stands out the most himself from the others. It states that different standings in birth orders affects the amount of parental tension and conditions in childhood. The four situations are he mainly focuses are first, second born, youngest, and only child. While the first and second born would have acts of dethronement acted upon them, where they are no longer the youngest and the light of their parents' life, and no longer the center of attention. In contrast, the youngest and the only child have no problem receiving attention from the parents. And let's go to the next one. All right. So, the central components. How do they say we develop our personality? I wrote that Adler would say we develop our personalities by the universal human need to be perfect or more superior. He would state that since we are all born as inferior, we all have different ways to compensate the different types of inferior personalities in us all. Social interests and birth order are also prevalent areas in childhood where we develop our personalities also. And to add also how we are raised by our parents and how they decide to neglect or to throne us or put us on a pedestal also creates like more inferiorities or superiorities in us all. Do they think a personality can change? Adler would think a personality can change and that people are able to control the changes also. He also theorized that throughout life's people developments could be molded and changed as they grow. I like this about Adler. He theorized that although we may seem alike in the beginning with all these inferiorities as a baby, all our pathways are different in the long run, and we're able to eventually have different endpoints in our lives. What really makes their ideas interesting or novel? Adler's ideas are interesting at the point in time where he was most prevalent because at this time Freud's ideas were mostly used in industry. Seeing Adler use a more positive approach and break away from Freud's idea is refreshing and more favored in our modern age. And I would agree so because a lot of people my age or in this year or in the past decade are becoming more they're becoming more open to the idea of that personality is basically more of how we're raised, not particularly from how we're raised, whether we're neglected or put on a pedestal, and not just because of what type of people we are, basically. Next page. So, the theorist I decided to contrast Adler with is Karen Horney. Some topics I felt that they had contrasts and comparisons were biological needs and influence, neurotic needs, spoiling and neglecting, idealized self, feminine versus masculine. So, so for the first topic, biological needs and influences, Adler felt as that personality is shaped by unique social environments and interactions and not just to satisfy biological needs. While in contrast, Horney stated that personality does not depend on Biological forces, people are attracted for the needs of security and love, which not really a contrast, more like similarities. Neurotic needs, spoiling and neglecting. I felt like both of these theories are one the same or a little bit different from each other. While Adler generalized that inferiority and superiority were mostly caused by the pampering or neglecting of a person in their childhood, while Horney listed 10 neurotic needs that defenses against anxiety that would soon become a core personality for the person. So Adler was more general, while Horney went a little bit more deeper in the neurotic needs. Idealized self. To Adler, the more idealized self differs within everyone in that themselves are willing to decide whether they have reached that state. While, like Adler, Horney argued that all people have a fictional picture of themselves, she focuses more on the realistic values of the self-idealized image. For neurotic people, this is less realistic. And feminine versus masculine, I felt like this was important because we have Alfred Adler. He's a man, and he really emphasized on his how superiority is more masculine and how health is more important and like how they're built. While Karen Horney is definitely she's a woman theorist, and she went more in depth and more feminine aspects of personality theory. So Adler believes that the more masculine and fit the person is, the more superior they are due to his experience of being sick as a child, and he does not agree with the Oedipus complex. While Karen Horney theorized on such topics such as womb envy, where men feel jealous towards women due to the fact they can bear children, but agrees with Freud in the Oedipus complex, which are some points. Next slide. So in conclusion, I think the impact that Adler had provided to the topic of personality psychology is that he is able to introduce the topic of individual psychology. This was important because I feel that it is more commonly accepted in today's age compared to ideas of Freud or Horney. He describes that the uniqueness of each person was what shaped personality, not the biological motives. I think that Adler's most important contribution to the field is his theory on the effects of birth order and how they were raised by their parents may most likely affect the personality than otherwise biological senses. He can reason why growth is important within all of us and how, as time continues, personalities become more developed and well-rounded. Okay, next slide. It should be references. Thank you again. Bye.